Welcome to Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom. Stay informed with quick, easy-to-listen summaries of our latest articles, perfect for when you're on the go. No reading required. Subscribe for free at mercola.com for the latest health insights.
Hello, and welcome to Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom. I'm Ethan Foster. Today we're examining a silent but widespread problem, the lack of air quality monitoring across much of the United States, and the serious cardiovascular and metabolic risks that follow. We'll look at new research, the communities most affected, and practical steps you can take to safeguard your health right now.
Thanks, Ethan. Poor air oversight isn't just an environmental issue. It's a direct, measurable threat to personal health. When more than 50 million Americans live in counties with no monitoring stations, they breathe unknown levels of particulate matter, nitrogen dioxide, and ultrafine particles without any daily warning system. That data gap leaves families unprotected and policymakers uninformed.
The study you're referring to appeared in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Researchers mapped every EPA station and found 1,848 counties, over 40% of U.S. land area, completely unmonitored. How did that landscape of air quality deserts become so extensive?
Funding, geography, and outdated priorities all play roles. Monitoring stations cluster in metropolitan corridors to satisfy primary standards aimed at populated areas. Rural regions, especially across Arkansas, Iowa, Kansas, Nebraska, and South Dakota, were left out. 80% or more of counties in those states have zero stations, so residents receive no local pollutant readings, despite farming and mining activities that can elevate exposure.
The demographics are striking. The analysis shows that many monitoring deserts overlap with poorer counties and communities that historically lack political leverage. What specific social patterns emerged?
Rurality was the strongest single predictor. Counties with higher proportions of agricultural, forestry, or mining workers, lower educational attainment, and higher poverty rates were far more likely to lack monitors. In the southern Black Belt, socioeconomic disadvantage and absence of monitoring converge, compounding health burdens already amplified by limited medical resources.
Let's connect that environmental neglect to concrete health outcomes. What cardiovascular and metabolic effects arise when air isn't tracked and therefore isn't mitigated?
Chronic exposure raises blood pressure, accelerates atherosclerosis, worsens insulin resistance, and elevates obesity risk. For every 10 micrograms per cubic meter increase in fine particulate matter, short-term heart attack risk jumps about 2.4% within days. Over years, the same increment can push fatal heart disease risk up by roughly 10%, well above thresholds recommended by the World Health Organization.
Not all pollutants act the same. Which compounds did the research spotlight as particularly damaging?
Fine particulate matter, PM 2.5, penetrates deep into the lungs and bloodstream. Nitrogen dioxide, largely from vehicle exhaust, injures arterial lining and spikes blood pressure even after brief exposures. Ultrafine particles, smaller than 0.1 micron, travel through the bloodstream to the brain, triggering systemic inflammation that can initiate clot formation and impair metabolic regulation.
We often hear about brief spikes on bad air days versus lifelong exposure. How do the short and long-term effects differ?
Acute exposure primarily sparks cardiovascular events, heart attacks and strokes, within hours to days as inflammatory markers surge. Chronic exposure, meanwhile, steadily stiffens arteries, promotes plaque buildup, and impairs glucose metabolism. That long-run damage sets the stage for diabetes, obesity, and persistent hypertension, making everyday pollution as consequential as diet or exercise choices.
Older adults, children, and minority groups often endure higher pollutant loads. Did the study quantify that disparity?
Yes. Seniors in unmonitored rural areas experienced accelerated progression of heart disease relative to urban counterparts with similar baseline health. Minority populations living near traffic corridors or industrial sites without monitoring faced both higher exposure and higher baseline vulnerability, magnifying risk beyond socioeconomic status alone.
Historical station placement also matters. The Clean Air Act of 1970 drove a surge in new monitors, but closures have outpaced openings in recent years. What's driving that reversal?
Budget constraints and shifts toward cost-saving technologies led many agencies to retire aging equipment without replacement. Urban sensors required to meet federal reporting remained. Rural units classified under secondary standards, meant to protect agriculture and wildlife, were deemed optional. That misalignment left farming communities invisible to federal databases, even as crop dust and diesel machinery generated pollutants.
With government coverage uneven, listeners need personal strategies. How can individuals cut daily exposure when public data are missing?
Start indoors. Run a HEPA-equipped purifier continuously in main living spaces and especially in the bedroom, where your body repairs overnight. Replace filters on schedule to maintain capture efficiency. Keep windows closed during rush hour traffic or wildfire events, and track regional forecasts through reputable apps, even if local monitors are absent, since satellite-derived models can still flag high-pollution days.
Many people exercise outdoors at dawn or dusk. How should they time activities when local readings aren't available?
Avoid peak traffic hours, generally 7 to 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m. Plan walks or runs mid-morning after pollutants disperse or early afternoon before evening congestion. After rain, particle counts often drop, offering safer windows. If wildfire smoke is visible or your region issues an advisory, shift cardiovascular workouts indoors to a filtered environment.
Everyday household items also release chemicals. What adjustments do you recommend for indoor sources?
Replace scented candles, aerosol sprays, and chemical cleaners with unscented plant-based products. Store paints and solvents in sealed containers outside the living area. Vacuum with a HEPA-rated machine to remove settled particles from carpets and rugs, and launder curtains and bedding regularly to reduce dust reservoirs. These actions lower baseline indoor loads that can synergize with outdoor pollution.
Ventilation is sometimes misunderstood. When is opening windows beneficial, and when is it risky?
Open windows 10 to 15 minutes a day during periods of low outdoor pollution, often early afternoon in rural zones or after rainfall, to exchange stale indoor air. Avoid ventilating while neighbors burn wood during agricultural spraying or when haze from distant fires is present. Strategic ventilation prevents buildup of indoor pollutants without importing new ones.
Let's recap the 5 key steps listeners can implement immediately. Operate HEPA purifiers. Schedule outdoor activity wisely, ventilate selectively, eliminate indoor chemical sources, and create a pollutant-free bedroom. Anything to add before we close?
Those measures form a practical shield, but long-term solutions require equitable monitoring infrastructure. Citizens can advocate for expanded EPA funding, support state initiatives to install low-cost sensors in rural counties, and participate in community science projects that crowdsource air data. Awareness drives policy, and policy, in turn, protects health.
That's a clear path forward. Reliable data empower communities to demand cleaner air, and individual habits fill the gaps until that data arrives. Thanks, Cellular, for outlining both the systemic challenges and what each of us can do today to reduce cardiovascular and metabolic risks linked to pollution.
Thank you, Ethan, and thanks to our audience for taking this issue seriously. Small daily choices, informed by sound science, can preserve heart health even in areas where official monitoring lags behind.
This has been Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom. I'm Ethan Foster with co-host Alara Sky. Stay informed, take charge of your environment, and join us next time for another direct look at the factors shaping your cellular health.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe now and click the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.